the courthouse in downtown Chicago, felt unusually quiet that Monday morning. Outside, the sky was covered with gray clouds, matching the heavy feeling inside the building. I sat on a wooden bench in the hallway, staring at the polished floor while people walked past me. Some were arguing, some were crying, and some looked completely exhausted. Divorce day seemed to drain the life out of everyone. Across the hall, my wife Emily stood beside her lawyer, whispering and occasionally glancing in my direction. She looked confident, almost relieved. Her lawyer, a tall man in a dark suit, carried a thick folder of documents and spoke with the kind of calm certainty that made it clear they believed this case was already won. To be honest, maybe it was, after 10 years of marriage. Everything had fallen apart faster than I ever expected. The argument started small, about money, about work hours, about how little time we spent together. But over time, those arguments turned into long nights of silence and cold dinners at opposite ends of the table. When Emily filed for divorce, she didn't hold back. She wanted the house. She wanted both cars. She wanted full custody of the kids. Her lawyer built a strong case. Emily had been the one more involved with the children. She handled their school meetings, doctor visits, and daily routines, while I spent most of my time working long hours, trying to keep our finances stable. In court, those details mattered when the hearing began. The judge calmly reviewed the documents. While both lawyers explained the agreement, I listened quietly as they listed everything that would go to Emily. The suburban house we bought 5 years earlier, the SUV she loved driving, even the savings account we had built together. Every item felt like a small piece of my life being handed away. But I didn't interrupt. I didn't argue. I didn't object at one point. The judge even looked at me and asked carefully, "Mr. Carter, do you understand and agree to the terms presented in this settlement?" I nodded slowly. "Yes, Your Honor." Emily glanced at me, surprised by how easily I accepted everything. Her lawyer gave a satisfied smile, as if confirming his strategy had worked perfectly. Within 20 minutes, the decision was finalized. Just like that. 10 years of marriage ended with a few signatures on paper. Outside the courtroom, Emily walked out holding the documents with visible relief. Her friends were waiting near the entrance, ready to comfort her and celebrate what they clearly believed was a victory. I heard someone whisper she got everything. Maybe they were right. Emily passed by me in the hallway without saying a word. For a brief moment, our eyes met, but there was nothing left to say between us. I picked up my briefcase from the bench and slowly walked toward the exit. The building doors opened, and cold air hit my face as I stepped outside. People probably expected me to look angry or defeated, but I wasn't, because while everyone focused on what Emily had taken, no one paid attention to what I quietly kept. Inside my briefcase was a small folder, thin, simple, and almost unnoticed. And in that folder were the documents that would change everything. A week after the divorce, Emily officially moved back into the house. The same house we had bought together 5 years earlier. The same place where our children had taken their first steps, and where we once believed our future would grow. Now it was completely hers. At least that's what everyone believed. From what I heard through mutual friends and social media posts, she seemed happier than she had been in months. She uploaded pictures of the living room with new decorations, and captions like "fresh start" and "new chapter of my life." Her friends filled the comments with congratulations and supportive messages, "Proud of you. You deserve this stronger than ever." Looking at those posts, most people would assume she had won the divorce completely. The house was in her name now. Both cars were parked in her driveway, and the kids lived with her full time. Meanwhile, I moved into a small one-bedroom apartment across town. The place was simple, plain white walls, a tiny kitchen and furniture I had bought secondhand. It was nothing like the big suburban home I used to live in. A few co-workers visited once and looked around awkwardly. "Man, this must be rough," one of them said quietly. I just smiled. "It's temporary," I replied. The truth was, I didn't need much. The apartment was quiet, peaceful, and most importantly, free from arguments and tension. For the first time in years, my mind felt clear still. People assumed the worst. My brother called me one evening. "I heard Emily took everything." He said, "Why didn't you fight harder?" I leaned back on the couch, staring at the ceiling. Because sometimes fighting isn't the smartest move. I told him. He didn't fully understand, but I didn't bother explaining. The reality was far more complicated than it looked on the surface. Emily had insisted on keeping every major asset. During the divorce negotiations, Her lawyer pushed aggressively for it, arguing that stability for the children required her to stay in the house and maintain the same lifestyle. I didn't argue once. What they never questioned, however, were the details attached to those assets. The house wasn't as simple as it appeared. It came with property taxes, maintenance contracts, and a renovation loan we had taken 2 years earlier. The nicer SUV also had a remaining financing balance, and then there were a few business-related obligations. Connected to some of our shared financial accounts, Emily's lawyer skimmed through those sections quickly, during negotiations focusing more on ownership than responsibility, but I had already reviewed every single document months earlier. Carefully, quietly, the thin folder in my briefcase contained copies of agreements, business registrations, and financial structures that most people wouldn't bother studying closely. To anyone else, those papers looked boring and insignificant. But to me, they represented something far more important: protection. Late one night, sitting alone in my apartment, I opened the folder again and slowly flipped through the pages. Each document reminded me of the long nights I had spent planning, calculating, and preparing for a situation I hoped would never happen. Yet here we were. Emily believed she had taken the entire life we built together: the house, the cars, the family home, and maybe for now it looked exactly that way. But the story of what we truly owned and what we truly owed was only beginning to unfold. 2 months after the divorce, the first letter arrived at Emily's house. At first, she probably didn't think much about it. Bills were normal. Every homeowner received them: property taxes, utilities, maintenance reminders, but that first letter was only the beginning. Within the next few weeks, more envelopes started appearing in her mailbox. A property tax notice, a home insurance renewal statement, a maintenance contract for the heating system. Then came something bigger. A letter from the bank. At first, she ignored it, assuming it was just another routine notice connected to the mortgage. But when the second letter arrived, marked urgent financial obligation, she finally opened it. Inside were documents referencing a loan connected to a small business account. Our business account, the same account we had used years earlier, when we started a small consulting company together. At the time, it seemed like a smart idea. Emily handled the administrative side, while I managed the technical work, but the company never really succeeded. After a couple of difficult years, the business began losing money, and eventually we stopped focusing on it altogether. However, some of its financial structures, loans, contracts, and obligations still existed on paper. And now those obligations had a new owner, Emily. A few days later, my phone rang while I was sitting in my apartment working on my laptop. Her name appeared on the screen. I already knew why she was calling. I answered calmly, "Hello." Her voice came through immediately tense and angry. "Why am I receiving letters from the bank about business loans?" I paused for a moment before responding. "What letters? The consulting company loan," she said sharply. "They're saying payments are overdue." I leaned back in my chair. "Well, the company account was connected to our shared financial assets," I explained carefully. "When the settlement transferred the house and certain accounts to you, the obligations attached to the move, too." There was silence on the phone for several seconds. "You never told me that," she said. I spoke honestly. "You never asked." During the divorce negotiations, Emily and her lawyer had been completely focused on ownership. They wanted every visible asset: the house, the cars, and control of the major accounts. What they overlooked were the details attached to those assets. Legal responsibility travels with ownership. If someone takes the property, they also inherit the financial commitments connected to it. And there were quite a few. Property taxes for the house had increased significantly that year. Maintenance costs were higher than expected, and the remaining business loans still had years of payments left. Emily sounded overwhelmed. "This is thousands of dollars." She said, "I can't handle all of this alone." I remained quiet for a moment before answering Emily. This was part of the settlement. She sighed heavily on the other end of the phone. What she still didn't realize was something even more important. While the failing consulting company had been tied to our shared assets, I had quietly separated something else long before the divorce began. A new project? A technology startup I had started building quietly 2 years earlier. Unlike the old company, this one had never been registered under joint ownership. It belonged to only one person, me, and while Emily was now dealing with the weight of the past, my future was just beginning to take shape. By the end of the year, life looked completely different for both of us. Emily was still living in the house, But the excitement she once showed online had slowly disappeared. The cheerful posts about her new beginning had stopped instead. The reality of managing everything alone had started to weigh on her. Owning a large house wasn't as simple as it sounded. During the divorce, every month there were new expenses. Property taxes continued to rise. The heating system broke down during winter and needed expensive repairs. The SUV she had insisted on keeping still had loan payments attached to it, and the business loan connected to the old consulting company hadn't magically disappeared. Responsibility followed ownership. At first, Emily tried to manage everything. She cut back on unnecessary spending and even considered selling one of the cars. But the bills kept coming and the pressure slowly built. Meanwhile, my life was moving in a completely different direction. The small technology startup I had quietly built over the last 2 years was finally gaining attention. What started as a simple idea in my apartment had grown into something real. At first, it was just me working late nights with a laptop, writing code and contacting potential clients. Slowly, a few early users began testing the software. Then a small tech blog mentioned our platform. That single article changed everything. Within weeks, new customers started signing up. Emails from potential partners appeared in my inbox. A few investors even asked to schedule meetings. For the first time in years, I felt genuine excitement about the future. 6 months later, I moved from the small one-bedroom apartment into a modest but comfortable condo closer to the city center. I also hired 3 employees to help manage the growing workload. The company was no longer just an idea. It was becoming a real business. One evening, almost a year after the divorce, my phone rang again. This time the call came from Emily. Her voice sounded very different from before. Less angry, more tired. "Can we meet?" she asked quietly. I agreed, and we met a few days later at a small cafe not far from our old neighborhood. When she arrived, I noticed immediately how stressed she looked. The confidence she had shown during the divorce was gone. After a few minutes of awkward silence, she finally spoke. "I didn't realize how expensive everything would be." She admitted. I nodded but didn't say much. She continued. "The house, the loans, everything. It's overwhelming." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she looked at me. "I heard your company is doing well," she said. I gave a small smile. "It's growing." She looked down at her coffee cup, thinking. I guess I was so focused on winning the divorce that I didn't think about the future. I understood what she meant. During the divorce, everyone believed Emily had taken everything important: the house, the cars, and control of the life we built. But in the end, those things were only pieces of the past. While she was fighting to keep what already existed, I had quietly focused on building something new. And sometimes the most valuable thing you can keep is the future. No one else sees coming.